Right, folks, welcome back. Hope you're having a good start to your week. And for those of you in America, hopefully you got something nice in your chest. This video is going to be a Halls of Atonement. And it is probably, to date, the best run I have ever done. Now, I know that's a lot of hype, but that's the reality. There was one fuck up, basically, and I was the one that cocked up. So, expect a good run. Let's get into it. So, this is a 20 Halls of Atonement. I am running IQD for this key. And the reason I am running IQD is because of the way that we do pulls in this dungeon. We've had a lot of practice running high Halls of Atonement. And as a result, the pull style, where I need the DPS, works out to be roughly every 4 minutes. Which means every second wings, which enables us to have instances where IQD will pull through. So IQD just gave me mastery, and we tear through this pack. We have used all our cooldowns, but that is because this is the cadence at which this pull goes. So for about 30k DPS between me and Ark, and then 40k for Stitch as the monk. Now, obviously, these affixes are tyrannical, inspiring, and quaking, which isn't great for a 4 melee comp. Ideally, we'd probably want another ranged in here to make it easier, but unfortunately, you have 2 paladin mains. 2 paladin mains, a monk, and a tank. Can't be helped. But it's fine. I am running Mechanicos again for this, so you will see Bron on occasion, and you will see me kind of abuse Divine Toll as well. I am running Execution Sentence because it is a tyrannical week, and I wanted the additional damage, although there are a few Execution Sentence misses over the course of this dungeon, but it's alright. This is off the back of that Sanguine Depths that we did that was a bit of a cluster, because we did all we did 20 Sanguine Depths, 20 Halls of Atonement, and 20 Theatre of Pain all in one evening. And the Theatre of Pain key will be scheduled to go up tomorrow. So you guys will get to see that on reset for Europe on Wednesday, along with the weekly news. So double video whammy for that. Enjoy. But yeah, so kind of just rolling. And at the moment, we've kind of been in combat for this entire duration. So the DPS has obviously dipped, and I'm at about 16k overall between these two packs. Again, this is where Stormy's hyper-aggressive pulling kind of comes into its own, and it highlights just how much our own personal human errors are affecting our key pulling at this point. Because we time this key quite comfortably. Won't tell you how comfortably. You'll get to see that at the end. But it highlights that when we're on form and we play on form, we could be doing higher keys than just 20s. I myself am now at the high end of 2300 with Stormy, Time, and Stitch in the 2400 range in terms of IO score. So there's every possibility that we could hit 2500 or even 2600 if we really, really went for it. But I think in order to do that, we need a week that is a little bit more beneficial to our comp setup. But you can see that IQD's back up and a minute left on wings. Now, I'm not going to need IQD anytime soon, so I don't press it, because the next 2 pulls, one is going to be this incinerator, which is fine. I can use my 1 minute here freely, but then the next pull is going to be a big pull. Like Stormy likes pulling 3 packs together on the next pull that you'll see. So I don't use IQD. I'm holding it because I want either mastery or haste going forward. So it's all good. We use minutes. We rotate the kicks. We've already pulled the mobs to the side, which is fine. And this kind of cadence is settled in. We know what we're doing, we've practiced it, and I have to be conscious about the whole pot thing because we will be doing an invis skip going into Echelon. Another interesting thing to note is, incidentally, we found that our bloodlust timings matched better for this key, despite the fact that they weren't our initial plans. So you can see here that I'm going for as much mastery as I physically can. I'm at 71% mastery at the moment, and I only have one champion's brand. So I'm stacking as much mastery as physically possible, which kind of shows the mist's key and why I think that my DPS is going to be very much a matter of how we pull and how we do things. So you can see here that this is a big pull. We have 2 inspiring mobs, which means that this pack needs to die. So you've got Ashen Hollow is out, Burst is going out, and I believe this execution sentence misses. Oh no, it went through. Unfortunately, the loyal beasts couldn't be stopped, but it's fine. Everything is already nearly dead, so Stormy isn't going to take that much damage. And the pack's down. We still have time left on Wings, it's about to expire, and we've still got a little bit of Ashen Hollow as well. So this is what I mean by our packs. The cadence of these packs are about 4 minutes apart, which is fantastic. So IQD is definitely getting its work done here. So you can see that already at the moment I am at about 14.2k DPS overall, which is almost double my average. Obviously, the start of the Halls of Atonement is an interesting dungeon because the start of it is very trash heavy, but then once you get to Echelon or Echelon, don't know how you pronounce it because I don't have voice lines playing often when I play through the game, especially late into an expansion. I do for the start of an expansion because I want to hear all the voice acting and just listen to the story and stuff, which is fantastic, but a year into an expansion, everything just gets muted. Yeah, so as I was saying, once you get to that, though, you then basically have 3 bosses pretty much back to back. You do have a little bit of trash in between them, but for the most part, like 80% of the trash will be done before you get to that second boss. So, Halls of Atonement is one of those dungeons where a tyrannical week you'd think, right, okay, I need to put more boss damage into it. And you do, like having execution sentence and primary boss damage is good. But at the same time, like I've made the mistake in the past where I've used Divine Resonance as my legendary of choice, thinking like boss damage, boss damage, boss damage, rather than the fact that you are doing 80% of the dungeon's trash before you hit that second boss. Being able to get through that quickly is more important than being able to shave the boss time down. Because if it takes you an extra 10 minutes to get through all the trash that you need to, you're not going to make that up on 3 bosses. So that's kind of why I'm playing to this cadence build. So I've got 30 seconds left on IQD. My cooldowns aren't up anyway, so there's been a little bit of desync, not an egregious amount of desync here, because I've got 6 seconds left on... Oh, Execution Sentence and Final Reckoning have just come back. I have 30 seconds left on Seraphim, Divine Toll, and Wake of Ashes because I've used them as a 45-second clump. And this is where I was kind of going into the fact that, like, Mechanicos is having Mechanicos being able to lower the cooldown of Divine Toll means that you can essentially break your cooldowns down into 3 sections. And it's that situational awareness of knowing where they go. So, right, is something going to last a minute? Great, use your minutes. Is it going to last maybe 40 seconds? If it's going to last maybe 40 seconds, just use Seraphim and Wake. But you can fit a Divine Toll in that as well, because Mechanicos will drop it down to a 40-second cooldown if you hit 5 targets. Which means that it'll actually come off cooldown before your Seraphim and your Wake, which I am trying to make full use of in these higher keys. And I suspect we'll probably see a lot of use in 9.2. So we have a minute left on Bloodlust. And we decide to not bother using it. We're going to save it for the next boss. Because we're going a lot faster than we anticipated. And we're kind of like, what are we doing? So you can see there the Loyal Beast gets off. That's probably on me. I should have probably War Stomped beforehand, or had the Houndmaster targeted, but Stormy basically just stands still, pops his cooldowns, and just goes to town. One good thing about bears is when they're in their cooldowns and they're incarning and they're thrash spamming, they're pretty much immortal. Which means that he can afford to just stand there, which is great. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Some bear druids don't feel confident enough to do that, so I have been in groups with other guardians that have just kited unnecessarily, which in a fight like this is a lot more detrimental, especially when I'm playing on my warlock or something like that. You guys may actually start seeing me do keys as warlock, hunter, and a few other classes besides. More because I am turning into a bit of a gold goblin. We're getting into the second half of the expansion now, and my total gold funds are decreasing dramatically, and I need to get my account ready and prepped for the start of the next expansion, because it's always very expensive at the start of a next expansion. So we're going to start seeing that wind up as well. So I have enough in the bank for anything going forward. So you may see a bit of that, or alternatively you may see me just doing the same with my melee DPS, specifically warrior, so that we can make my account look a little bit more attractive. Because although, to fill you guys in slightly off topic while this boss fight goes ahead, because there's not too much to talk about at this point, we hopefully all know how Halkias works at this point, so it's just avoid damage and just go through rotations. I am being as aware of my pot usage as possible here, because I basically have it in muscle memory that whenever I hit wings, I pretty much always pot. So I go through my potions at a ridiculously fast speed. But obviously we are in Viz skipping. So I am trying very, 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 very hard to not hit my cooldowns, or to not hit potion. So you can see that I use my wings and everything, and made sure not to press pot. That was my main focus at this point. Less so about the amount of damage I was doing on my rotation. It was just do not hit potion, because I did not want to have to cost the run 5 seconds for me to essentially die and get rezzed at the other end. Which, thankfully, I might have succeeded. But back to what I was saying, slightly off topic while we do this part. The boss, or the current situation in terms of raiding, is I have been invited into a guild, and I am currently trialing for a guild. And we did raid on Wednesday just gone, doing Mythic Sylvanas. Now, we managed to see Phase 3, so we got some progress. And we got a lot more progress than what I'm used to. However, the current raid times are somewhat difficult for me to manage. And hopefully we get cutting edge, but I am still looking for a guild that is better suited to my time. And for that, it still means making sure that I have other classes that are available, and or improving my logs on my paladin to make my paladin more attractive to other guilds. So the hunt is still technically on, but we'll see how things go going forward. But for the meantime, we have a home from home, as it were. And I'll keep you guys updated on that. Now, obviously, we have bloodlusted this second boss, and the timings are a little bit better. I am still a few seconds out from Wings, so Wings is about to come back up, and I was going to try and hold them briefly to try and line them up with more ads coming in with Stone Call. But after the discussion, I basically just pop them anyway. Like I Seraphim, Stone Call comes through into a blood torrent, so we move, and then obviously the ads spawn, and I hit Wings and everything now, and it gives me mastery, which is fantastic because that means I do a considerable amount of damage and a front loading. One problem with the amount of things here though, and kind of a criticism for Quaking at least, is I tend to try and be as forgiving as I can to other members of my party. Realistically, I should force time out, and it's a conversation Time and I have had. Like, Time gets my intention and stuff, and that's fine. Like, you can see here that I run a lot further out than Time does, and realistically, Time and I should have swapped places. So Time kind of berates me a little bit for that, which is fine and totally understandable because, let's face it, I do more DPS than he does most of the time. But just a slight observation, like, it's all well and good trying to be considerate for your other players, but I need to make sure that I am still within range to do something. I just shield that because I didn't get out of it in time. I was a little bit slow on the mark. I kick that gargoyle in just to try and get it in range for things, and then we just go through our minute rotation again. So, not too much to say really here. The boss has got 20% health left. We kind of just smack through it and kind of have fun. Needless to say, at this point, given how smooth the run is going, I am rather confident and am hopeful that we time this. Because at this particular point in time, we needed, both Ark and I needed these two keys to be timed in order for our keystone hero. So we had the Halls of Atonement and we had Theatre of Pain to do. Which, funnily enough, are our next two keys. Or this key and our next. So you can see here that things get really, really tight. But we stay, we push, we kill the boss. Now, again, you'll see that IQD has a minute and 5 seconds on its cooldown remaining. Execution of Aerith. We're already discussing how we're going to do the next pull. We know, or Stormy has said, that the next pull is going to be a big pull. I get a little bit confused there because there's too many circles, so I try and find a gap. Again, as we discussed previously, with the immunities, both Time and I, if we're targeted, we bubble the debuff off us, or bop it off us, and then we taunt to take a sever. So you can see here that I do it, I bop, and then I actually click my taunt, because my taunt is not on a easily accessible keybind, primarily because I do not tank or use the spell often. I should probably look to put it on a less used keybind, or give it a designated keybind that is easier to access. Maybe, off the top of my head, maybe Shift Y, potentially. Something that I'm almost never going to press unless it's exclusively for that task. So you can see here that I've gone Champion's Brand. I am now at 80% mastery, which is 79% increased damage to 79.6% increase to holy damage, which is huge. And you can see here that I'm using this time to actually reapply my sharpened weapon because I realized it dropped off. So we're learning from the plague faults that we did last week. So I focus the Gargan because it's an inspiring mob. I want that to be my primary target. I have unfortunately dropped below the point where I'm not gaining my mastery bonus. However, time immediately caps me back up and puts me in my place. So I get the bonus I need, and we just delete everything. Ark is putting in the work with his Storm Elemental, and I am cleaning things up where I can. Again, focusing inspiring mobs. Everything goes down. Time is kind of making a joke at this point about the fact that he did almost no healing, because we deleted everything. So far, we're at 93%, 254 count, and we've only got a little bit left to do in terms of DPS, and at the moment my DPS is 10.6k, which is higher and better than my current average, which is really, really, really good. Now, I've got 16 seconds until I can use my cooldowns again. Execution Sentence is back up, which is because I didn't use it in the previous pack. I could have had a lot more front-loaded damage if I was using something like Zeal for that pack, but I feel like for boss use, it still comes in a lot better, especially during a tyrannical week. So Time is doing the work here. He has both gargoyles. If you are Venthia, you can actually control multiple bats at the same time, but you have to be quick about it. You basically have to take control of one and instantly spam the ability to get any that are within range. It takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of getting used to, but as you've seen in this particular key for both Halkias and for High Inquisitor Alize here, it does provide a huge amount of damage for the person involved. If you have multiple Venthirs in your group, as is the case, or if you're pugging, make sure at the start of the dungeon you discuss who is going to be taking them. Because I have seen a lot of DPS that we've pugged with, especially when Time's been in the group with us, that have actively ignored him when he's tried speaking to them because it's like, oh, I can take it, it's more DPS for me. And if that's something that you really want, especially for Halkias, there are other gargoyles that you can pull if you really, really want to. But you need to communicate that. In the case with having Wings, Ashen Hollow, and things like that, as you can see, Time did 7k DPS. He did higher during the burst, and Stitch is only just catching him, and I still have a ways to go before I catch him. So giving them to a Holy Paladin, especially in this case, is definitely the place to be. Arc is currently storing his cooldowns because Arc comes into his own in the next room. Now, the next room's a bit of a contentious thing, because believe it or not, there is a video going around, and I will link it below, that shows that there is actually a way, whether it's a bug or not, where you can actually skip the next room. And it requires the use of the Overwhelming Power Crystal, which I'm not currently wearing or using, but once this boss is dead, you can actually target Lord Chamberlain with a macro through this portal, or through the room. And if you activate Overwhelming Power Crystal, go through, you will aggro him. So you will go through this portal with the Overwhelming Power Crystal up, standing stock still at the very end, strafe to the left or right slightly, and one of the statues will be pulled through the room. That then means that you can invis through. However, I'm not entirely sure what that would come under, if it's just a unintended bug that needs sorting or something like that, but as things currently stand, it is possible, but it does mean that you would need to use an invis potion. And the reason I bring this up is because potentially you can then pick up the last 7% or 19 count, again, for those of you working in count rather than percentages, would then be able to pick that up somewhere else within the dungeon. A much easier place, because let's face it, Inquisitor Sigurd is... it's a long amount of time. It's a rather long fight for a small amount of percentage, especially when you consider the fact that only certain classes can make full use of this room. Arc, for instance, being an elemental shaman is one example. Druids with Moonkin form and Convoke, again, another form, or just flat boomies. Classes with large amounts of AoE that can make use of these small clumps. As a Ret Paladin, I am next to useless. I can do a little bit of damage, but that's about it. You can see here that I use my minutes because we're not necessarily worried about my cooldown usage at this point. I've saved wings though, because I don't want to wait until like 3/4 of the way through the fight for this. So, as you can see, we're about to go into the last boss. We have just under 10 minutes remaining, and we're pretty confident at this point. Unfortunately, it is worth saying at this point that this is where I fuck up. I will die during this fight, and the way I die is stupid. So I was very rough with myself after this. But there is only the one death. So, as you can probably guess, yeah, this key was done quite well. So you can see that even though we've just pulled the boss, and the boss is only 10%, my minutes are now back. So I am prepping and setting up to use my burst, because we're also waiting for Bloodlust as well. So that was another reason why I felt I could use my 1 minute during the fight with Inquisitor Sigurd, because we still had time on Lust. So everything's lined up for Lust. I've got the Mastery, which puts me at about 120% Mastery. Or about 116 Mastery, I think, with IQD and 80% Mastery from everything else. So Stormy says that he's going to take the front too. However, both Time and I stand in positions to be able to take if we need to, with Stitch taking the rears and Arc acting as a secondary as well. So you saw there that I actually took it for a tick while Stormy readjusted, which is fine and works out perfectly well. Not necessarily needed, because Stormy and Stitch both know what they're doing, but having that backup and stuff is just a safety net. So regardless how your group does it, obviously try and be a little bit helpful where you can. So again, same plan. Stitch and Stormy will take 2 apiece, and by doing that you stand inside the boss's hit circle. You pretty much need to stand under his upraised hand. And monks are fantastic for it because they have so many defensives. available for it. So I use my minute, rotate through, and this is now the boss basically done. Just avoid a few statues and you're as good as golden. And unfortunately, my strafe is what murders me, as you'll see in a moment, because it's about to come through. So, dodge that one perfectly fine. Ark has now got himself into a position where he's kind of stuck in a corner. And unfortunately, I proceed to die. I die on the next statue toss, as you're about to see. So, run out for Erupting Torment. I then try to get round to where time is. Kinetic toss comes in, and I go forward and get clipped there. So, like, going back the 10 seconds, the point at which I get clipped, just pause it. I should technically have been fine. I think. No. I probably, if I was an extra yard out where Stitch was, I'd have been fine. So, just being a wheelchair, unfortunately. But weirdly enough, I got bounced. I got bounced in a weird direction, so I think I deflected off the thing. But we two-chested it. So, we two-chested a 20 Halls of Atonement, which really goes towards both Stormy's tanking and his aggressive nature on it, but that communication of knowing where our DPS is, or like how our pull timings work. So playing around Ashen Hollow, with it being a 4-minute cooldown, that means that I can afford to use an IQD. And in doing so, we averaged 9.1k DPS over the course of the dungeon, which is one of our higher values. Now, what let us down, obviously, aside from the death, was the single target boss damage. And this was a high mastery situation. Now, if we were to divvy that up with a little bit of versatility and crit, potentially we could have got higher. But taking away what it is, we did great. It was a good run, and hopefully me talking through it and being a little bit more what's the word? Hopefully me giving a little bit more insight into how I'm thinking in terms of using trinket cooldown and talking about the timings and how things have desynced on what was essentially a near perfect Halls for us will help you guys in a more obvious way than in some of my other keys where there's lots of little mistakes and I can't really break them down as much. Either way, hopefully this video helped and you enjoyed it. If there's any input or feedback that you have for me, if you are pushing those 23s, 24 keys, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I'd love to learn and we'll continue to improve. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy and take care.